28th meeting of the Stow Select Board. In the room tonight, we have Ingeborg Hageman-Clark, Hector Costanzas, Ellen Sturgis, our town administrator, Denise Stemkowski, and remote, we have Courtney Fresha. I will open the meeting up to public comment, keeping in mind that public comment is for anything that is not currently on the agenda this evening. And we just ask that it, be a couple of minutes and be polite. And does anyone have any public comments? All right, moving along. Do we have any board member comments this evening? Hector?
Since I won't be here at the first March meeting, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that tomorrow starts Women's History Month. And hope that we spend a month celebrating all the women in history and the history made possible that I'm surrounded by very competent women leading the town.
Thank you. You have anything?
Nope.
Nothing? All right. Denise, take it away.
Just a couple quick items this evening. As of February 23rd, we're back down to 5 cases of COVID here in Stow for a 4.58% positivity rate, and we are back well below the state and county average. So after a couple weeks of a higher number, we're back where we've been for the last few months. So as some of you saw, we just had the presentation with the FinComs on the school budget. The updated assessment has Stow at a 2.82% increase, which is down from the original projection of 5.78 and then 4.74. I'll have more information on this and the Minuteman assessment as part of my State of the Town update at our next meeting. We are meeting with Minuteman next Tuesday with the FinCom. Reminder that nomination papers are available at the town clerk's office for all elected positions. Papers can be picked up through March 29th and must be returned by March 31st. If you are planning to pull papers, please call the town clerk's office ahead of time and they will have them ready for you. As of right now, no one has returned papers. 3 people have pulled papers, 2 for the select board, 1 for the full term, 1 for the remainder term, and 1 for planning board. That's all have pulled. So plenty of seats still available. That's it for me tonight.
All right, excellent. We have 10 minutes to go until the public hearing. So why don't we jump and approve meeting minutes? Does anyone have any questions? Comments on the minutes?
I thought they were good.
Oh, good.
Excellent as usual.
Fantastic.
Excellent as usual.
All right, thank you.
I move to accept the meeting minutes of February 14th, 2023 meeting as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor, Ms. Hageman?
Aye.
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis? And Ms. Fresha?
Right?
And chair votes aye, that is unanimous. Thank you. All right, what else can we work on? How,
Are there any appointments? Guess not.
I don't think, not tonight, nope.
Appointments, right?
What's longer? Oh, do we want to talk about the select board comprehensive plan committee member selection?
Can we do that quick?
Think so? I mean,
It's worth a shot.
I'm gonna say, as I am on the ballot, I'm not going to offer, and Ellen will not be, so really it's between the 3 of you.
Rock, paper, scissors?
Courtney,
you-
was that a raising your hand?
I'm somewhat interested.
Okay.
So am I.
I'm fine without doing it.
Okay. I would, so 2 of you want to do it, fantastic. I don't know what to do with a stalemate. Because we're not going to vote on them.
Yes.
Oh, we have to
You
appoint
put
the
someone
person.
forward
Right.
from this board.
All right. Do I have any?
I'm trying to get to the description of the committee that was
Sorry.
in the packet,
Yep.
just to, there it is.
I
Yeah,
did
it's
do
page
it.
It's on
35.
page 35, thank you.
Sorry.
I might recommend, similar to when you're talking about the chair, you
Yeah.
ask both why they'd like to be in this and have a discussion and then make someone can make a motion.
That sounds great. Courtney, why would you like to be a member? of this committee?
Because I don't have enough to do. Let's see, I didn't prepare an answer. I just think it'd be interesting.
Okay.
Happy to help. My usual sort of answer.
Okay, and Hector?
Before I was on the select board, I was part of Stow Jedi and had worked with that group and Jesse to look at what the comprehensive plan committee was going to be, how it was gonna be selected, and what are some of the things that it was gonna look into. And now that I'm on the select board, I'd love the opportunity to be part of the committee to follow through with those.
Okay. Do I have a
Do
motion?
it. I do have one more
Yes.
comment that I just have a lot of respect for the work that the planning board does and their long range look at the trajectory of town growth, and so I think that's why I would find it interesting.
Okay. Yep.
Can I add? So at our next meeting, the board needs to choose a magic representative because Ingeborg is no longer able to serve in that role, if that changes anything, because I think it would still be between the two of you.
Right.
To serve in that seat, so I'm just putting that out there as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I have a nomination for a person?
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for both of you, do you both have enough time to really give this as well as enough foresight into it and ability to review drafts and comment and all that kind of stuff? And I see your yes. What about you, Courtney?
I believe so. I imagine it will require at least as much preparation as the select board, if not a good deal more so. It'll be a challenge running a business and doing that.
Okay. Still taking a
I
nomination.
nominate Hector.
Courtney, you're gonna kill me.
Did you hear?
Yeah, I did. All right.
I second that.
Fantastic. All in favor of Hector serving as the representative? Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
Ms. Segaman?
Aye.
Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And you can't vote for yourself, so.
You can.
Or you can vote for yourself.
I'll abstain.
Okay, fantastic. So that's 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Congratulations, Hector.
Thank you.
Now, I will add the caveat that some of the boards are having difficulty finding a representative, so this may not happen anytime soon. But I will, once we have the representative from the planning board, and now this, and we have 2 applicants for the resident seats. We're still waiting on Concom and Board of Health.
And do the representatives, like, I guess it's Board of Health and Finance is what's left.
Oh, yes.
But do they have to be sitting on the committee, or can they be
No,
there?
they have to
actually
be,
members
according
of
to
that
our
committee?
charter, they have to be current
Yeah,
members,
that's-
so,
But
yes,
some of those representatives don't have to actually be on the board, right?
correct. They could be a designee. This one requires it to be
An
a board
actual member,
So yes,
right?
sorry, FinCom, Board of Health, and Concom, and
Yeah.
we're still waiting on what will happen.
Okay. All right. 6 more minutes. What else can we check off? How quickly can we go over the draft animal policies? Did anyone have questions about those?
Yeah, I have a
You have a
bunch.
bunch of questions? Okay.
So do I.
What about service animals? That should be pretty straightforward.
No, I have questions on both of those.
Okay.
More than 7 minutes of questions? How about the
let's
proclamation
see.
policy?
Yeah, I think we could talk about that.
I mean, you could talk about anything.
We
if
can
topic
start
comes up.
talking about it, yeah, and then if it gets to 7:15, I'll put a pin in it. All right.
Is there a history associated with why that was sent to us?
Yeah, sorry, Denise, you wanna speak to?
Yeah, so the board is relatively new to doing proclamations. And when it started last year, I had asked KP Law if they had a policy, because of the litigation that's occurred around flags and free speech and what boards can do or not do. They wrote this policy as a recommendation that gives the board the authority to say no if a proclamation, it's full authority of this board on whether you put a proclamation. And so that's really what, it's just to protect you all if you decide that something is not appropriate, or give some guidelines. So
what kinds of things would be,
Well, I found it helpful.
yeah.
There were some things, I'm sorry,
No,
should
it's
I
not-
raise my hand?
you can speak.
There were some sentences here, I just didn't know why they were there, one of which is the decision to to have a proclamation is intended to communicate a message to the public on behalf of the town, and as such, it will be government speech for which usual constraints of the First Amendment will not apply. What does that mean?
because that goes back to the whole Boston flag controversy. So if we decided to, well, put a proclamation and it's considered government speak, you're speaking on behalf of the town. You're not speaking on behalf of the organization that presented it. You're speaking on behalf of the town. And it falls under the government speech category, which is technically gives us a little more, like, for instance, last year we put the pride flag on the town buildings. I had a request to put sort of an anti-flag, and I rejected it under the fact that the pride flag was government speak. No one came to me and said, we want to put a flag, we want you to hang a flag. We, as the DEI committee, internally decided that that was important to us. That's classified and protected under the government speech category. It doesn't give.
Where is that category defined?
It's under the law. It's under the, I think the,
Do you know what law?
I can look it up because I cited it in the response.
Okay, just curious for me,
Yes,
yeah.
so there's a defined difference between government speech. So however, if Nash had come and said, would you put this flag up for us? And we let them put a flag up, then we couldn't say no to someone wanting to put an opposing flag up.
Okay.
But so this proclamation becomes government speech that you are the ones proclaiming the statement, not a separate group.
Okay.
Did anyone have any questions about this? And this came directly from KP Law, let's
Yes.
just say this is
Yes,
legal.
I'll be honest, I would have adjusted it a little bit, I did not touch it.
Okay.
I looked at some of the things that said it would not be issued and looked at like birthdays and anniversaries, and
Yeah.
if there were things you wanted to commemorate, but you could do it in some other fashion other than a
Right.
proclamation. So this is 100%, and then the form at the end, that's what they recommended, but
Okay,
this is solely a draft for you to look at and review.
okay. Courtney, I see your hand up.
Yeah, were we to adopt this, which I think it makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's quite good. Were we to adopt it, the first sentence in the second paragraph at the end of the first line, it says, and whether the issue a proclamation, that I think should be to issue a proclamation.
There were
and that would
a
read-
couple of typos in here, yeah.
I'm sorry, whether to issue, okay?
Yeah, there was another missing two somewhere.
So let's make sure it's nice and tight and well spoken before we release it.
Sure. Surely. Any other, Hector?
So under the proclamations generally will not be issued for the following. I had a concern with the first and the second entry. The first one saying requests from national, international, or out-of-state organizations unless a local chapter or office located in the town of Stow is associated with the request. So if for some reason the NAACP has a request for a proclamation, they don't have a local chapter or office, we wouldn't accept that, even though it might affect residents in the town of Stow.
It's up to you. It says generally, that's a
Yeah.
decision of the board.
So these are guidelines.
Yeah, they're guidelines. It would
Okay.
be a discussion that the
So
board would have to
generally
have.
it does leave it vague.
Yes.
I think
Okay.
we did have an instance of something like this fairly recently in the last few months, and we kind of questioned because we didn't have a local chapter, and we sort of thought, I'm sorry, I can't give the exact example.
Yeah, I do remember that too. Courtney, I'm gonna stop you there because we're gonna start the public hearing real quick. All right, so I have to read this. Notice?
Yes, you do.
All right. Notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given in accordance with MGL Chapter 166, Section 22, that the Select Board will conduct a public hearing regarding a petition for sole pole relocations request by Hudson Light and Power Department to relocate utility poles as follows. Great Road, Stow, install new pole number 47.5 as a mainline pole and pole 47.5 PB as a push brace. These poles will be located on the southern side of Great Road at the intersection of Johnson Way and Great Road on the western side. Their purpose is to provide a takeoff and support for a new three-phase line that is required for plantation apartment construction. Also for permission to the petitioner to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as said petitioner may desire for distributing purposes. The public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at or after 7:15 p.m. in the Stow Town Building, 380 Great Road, Stow, Massachusetts. The public may attend the meeting in person or may participate via remote Zoom access. I move that the public hearing for relocation of utility poles, one mainline pole and one push brace be open. All in favor, Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
Can I ask, is there a second on that?
Oh, yep.
Second.
Yep.
All right, Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
Mr. Costanza?
Aye.
Ms. Hageman?
Aye.
Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are open.
There's just a typo in that reading. It says Johnson Way. It's actually Johnston Way. I assume that's not a major thing, but just make sure we have this issue with roads.
Oh,
recently.
yeah, sorry. Yep. Do I need to read the whole thing over?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I was doing that just sorry.
All right, so we have a poll hearing this evening, and our representative from Hudson Light and Power is Derek Scott. Would you like to tell us why you're here tonight?
Hudson Light and Power was approached by the construction company that's doing work at Plantation Apartments. Right now, single phase feeds the Plantation Apartments as it is.
Okay.
But new construction, they want three phase. So these two poles, one is a mainline pole, which would go right underneath the mainline wires that run on the southern side of Great Road.
Yep.
And the other one is a push brace. The push brace is just there to stabilize because we can't put a pole across the street because it would require an anchor and it would change a corner also, where we'd have to install another anchor in an abutter's property, and I'm trying to stay away from that.
Okay.
It's a straight line, it's real simple. That's really all it is. We are gonna overbuild the existing poles with the three phase.
Okay.
So we're trying not to disturb the seniors' power when we do this, so. Yeah.
Thank you. Chief Benoit is here.
Yes, I had not replied to the select board's request for comments, but we have taken a look at that location. We do have a safety concern as far as access to the apparatus. One, the road width to Johnston Way is very narrow.
Okay.
So any apparatus going onto Johnston Way needs as much room as possible to make that turn into there. I did speak to Scott in regards to the location of the pole. It was 1 to 5 feet from the street line.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a concrete or cement stone pillar at the edge of the driveway, which then pushes the pole closer to the edge of the road. Our concern is, one, if we call for a ladder truck because we have 3-story buildings in there, it will not be able to make the turn. And also, even today, leaving with the apparatus, the visible sight coming from the west is diminished.
Okay.
So we have those concerns.
Okay.
I know the contractor has looked at maybe widening the road, but one question we have is a pole on the east side of the roadway, can that new phase go over that way?
Okay.
Yeah, the reason we're not going on that pole is because there's not enough room to install the 3-phase lines on that pole. And if I did, I'd have to put another pole across the street with an anchor. And then when when you're going down the street, that pole's on this side, it's gonna have to hit this side, which means now I have to go and there needs to be an anchor in this guy's property and he may not like it. as far as as far as the line of sight, I'm not gonna tell you whether it's, you guys make up your own mind. I mean, I took pictures just so that everybody, so, when I say a push brace, this is exactly, this is what it's just an example.
Oh, okay. Yeah, oh, no, absolutely.
Oh, he just gave me, here you go.
Oh, okay,
There you
never
go.
mind. Sorry.
I'm just gonna use this for a second.
Okay.
We got
The first one is just an example of the push brace, but I have I got a Ram 250. So the second page, if you'll notice is the pillar that the chief talked about. I'm gonna propose that the contractor rip it out. And we'll see if we can push it back, because that is, I believe, is part of Johnson Way. It's not, doesn't need to be there anymore. So if I'm looking at my left, that's the sight line. And as you see the truck, if I go out any farther, I'm gonna lose my front bumper.
Oh, both of them are.
And then if you look to the right, you can see the sight line there. You won't see anything.
Right.
So you guys just make up your own mind as to the sight line as to, I mean, you're basically gonna install a pole. I can get it probably back to the edge, but if you look up top, those are the wires that I need to connect to. I can't go too far back because I won't be able to reach them.
Okay.
Alright, so let me ask this question to you. Your support pole is gonna be an angle like that?
Yep.
Because your drawing has it two horizontal.
You know, it was just this one, I mean, that's the push.
Right, but your drawing had one pole this way and the next one right behind it.
Well, it's kind of hard to draw with that kind of a plane.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to clarify, Derek, you think that this pillar here will come down and the poles will go where this is or further back?
It would go, these are the lines that I need to connect to.
Yep.
So see, the pole would have to go, I could cheat them a little bit, so I could probably really graze this, but I can have the contractor, I could just say, hey, it's in my way, you gotta take it down.
Because if you were on the other side of that, then the chief
Then the
wouldn't have as
lines.
much trouble in terms of.
Yeah, I don't wanna be out here, because
Right.
that just says hit me with a
Right.
car.
Right.
So, and I don't wanna do that, and I
Right.
don't, I
And the
definitely
fire
don't
truck doesn't want to hit you.
Yeah, I don't wanna get in the fire department's way, because I know they gotta get in and out of there. But I'm kind of constrained as to how far I actually move, because that's theoretically municipal space.
Right. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, so this is, and that was my other question, is this municipal, is this town land? I mean, or at some point that's plantation
I would
land?
assume that belongs, I mean,
Well, there's one on the other side, there's one on the other side, right, so it looks like it's
If
a,
you look to the right.
Like
isn't
entering
there
the
one of those
development.
Right.
things there?
Yes.
So it must have been
Yep.
part of the,
The original.
the original
Yeah, the
plan of
original.
development.
yeah.
So the 1 to 5 feet goes to the back of the stone pillar off the roadway.
Well, the 1 to the 5 feet is generally from the curb.
Right,
In-
so
in.
I did measure from the curb
Okay.
to here, and that's approximately 5 feet. So that's your,
That's, the space.
And that's where you'd propose to put it, is at the base, the back of that pillar?
I would probably, because of the way the Hendrix wire,
Uh-huh.
which,
it's closer to the front.
because there's wires up there that are no longer used,
Yep,
but there is one set that I need to get a hold of.
okay,
It would probably be, I would probably be at the, more of the front side of that pillar.
okay.
But enough to give the chief and the fire equipment clearance to
I
make
hope
that
it is,
turn.
I don't drive
I
the,
mean, what do you, chief, do you think that would be?
yeah, no, with the new information that the support pole is gonna be at an angle, they'll give us the line of sight. And with the pole being towards the stone pillar, we should have enough of a turning radius.
Okay.
I have extra arm, you have the pole and you have an arm that will sort of support the wires. I'll use the longest one I have to get me back as far as I can. That's about all I can tell you.
Yeah. Courtney.
Hudson's Towers are primary ladder for that.
Oh, Hudson is? Yeah.
Courtney.
Just a question regarding the planning board comment that they sort of would like to support non-proliferation of poles. Is there any of the other existing poles in the area where you're putting in the new one? I understand, you're making a turn with a heavy wire, it sounds like, and so that's why you need a pole at the corner is to pull against. But there's a pole to the west and a pole to the east. Is there any way that any of that can go away, or?
The pole to the west, that can't, the pole to the east, we may be able to take that one out at some point.
Okay.
I can't give you a definite answer on that though.
It'd be great to find out.
Because just based on these pictures, it looks like, because there's a pole right here, there's the eastern pole, and then the other pole is gonna go right here. So it's
Yep.
gonna be two poles right next to the driveway?
There'll be one basically on the other side of the driveway. I can speak for Hudson Light and Power. We don't need the other pole once I get everything on this one. But I
Okay,
can't necessarily make Verizon move their stuff or Comcast or anybody else that's on it.
Right.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
and you can't use this pole instead of putting one to the west of the driveway?
Because I couldn't put a push brace in there.
Okay,
So that means I'd have to put a pole, when you build this, it's kinda like playing pool, it's all about angles. So you'd have to put a pole across the street with an anchor, and then the pole that's on the inside now would be a corner. So that I'd have to put over time, it would just lean like we see so many poles, cause they're not anchored correctly.
okay.
And it would just turn into a mess.
You had a question.
I do. Is this time sensitive for plantation?
As far as, I've been asked to provide three-phase power as temp power. I can't do it as temp. I have to get the three-phase back there and then they can do whatever they want with it. And I think their construction schedule is they're looking to start at some point soon.
The reason I ask is because there's a lot of uncertainty here, and would it make sense to continue this for another 2 weeks and just have you both feel comfortable, have the actual locations placed? I hear both sides of this, and I understand why the pole's on that side and why you need the push brace, but I just wanna make sure that there's clear direction here, because these are, sketch plans on a drawing and.
Sorry, I'm not very good with computers.
No, it's actually very nice, it was very clear, and I know you're connecting to the other 47 line, and so I guess maybe it's for you, Chief, are you comfortable with this level of discussion that your concerns will have been addressed?
With the discussions tonight, yes, my concerns have gone away. I feel comfortable that Hudson Light and Power will do their best to push that pole as far back from the edge of the roadway, of both 117 and Johnston Way,
Okay.
to allow access.
All right, thank you. That was my biggest, that if there was still wishy-washy, then I would ask for a continuance, but I guess that's not necessary.
I mean, to help you guys, it's Hudson's ladder truck, right? That's
Yeah.
really the concern. If we set the pole, give them a call. Can you guys come over? Take the turn, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's great.
If it works, really, yes. If not, we'll try to move it back a little bit more. I think
We can certainly do that.
Do you mean set the pole? You mean like temporarily?
I'll set
As a
just the
test?
one, I don't need the push brace, so it'll just be sitting there. And if the
And then they
ladder
can
makes
test
it
it.
around,
Right.
I guess it's a good enough place.
That's the answer. If
Okay.
it doesn't. All right, do we have any questions on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, So for a public hearing, I'm just gonna remind you that we just need you to state your name and your address for the record. And Mark Dexter, it looks like your hand is raised.
Hello, Mark Dexter, 259 Great Road. So my property is on the north side that completely abuts all of this. I'm not there, obviously. So is the pole going to be on the? Is the pillar going to be torn up now on this side, or I didn't quite understand where the pole is going to go compared to the pillar? Is it like on the Great Road side or on the back?
Do you want to?
You have to
Oh, you have
talk
to
so the
talk.
camera goes to you.
Does that help? Can you see this by any chance?
Yep.
Yes, there you go.
There you go. Can you-
Yes. Now,
So it's the next
So-
page you want.
So where you see that pillar, that short pillar, that's where the pole is gonna go.
right where the pillar is now.
To the
On the,
Between-
left of it, closer to the other pole, farther away from the curve of the road, but like as close to where the far left corner of the pillar is, right? Like,
In the front of it, yeah.
yeah, in the front of it.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted clarification on that.
Yeah.
That was all. 'Cause
No,
like I said,
thanks.
I'm not there seeing where everyone's pointing, but thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
Actually, yeah, I have no problem with the poll itself. I was actually here in case someone was gonna argue against it.
All right, excellent, thank you, Mark. Do you have anybody else?
Nope,
I
No?
take it Valerie's not online?
They're in their own meeting
they have
tonight.
their own
That's
meetings.
right.
Yeah.
So she did send her comments along.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Any more questions from the select board? Nope. Can I close the public hearing?
You may.
do you make a motion?
Yes.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
All right, so yes, can you make that motion for me?
I move that the public hearing for relocation of the utility pole, one mainline pole and one push brace at Great Road and Johnson Way be closed.
Second.
All in favor? Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Ms. Hagman Clark?
I,
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that's unanimous.
And make a motion that the board approve and sign the application by Hudson Light and Power to relocate utility poles, one mainline pole and one push brace at Great Road and Johnson Way as indicated in the order for sole pole relocations received by the Select Board Office February 6, 2023.
Second, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Any further questions?
I'd like to amend the motion.
Yep.
I think the motion should be as discussed at this meeting because we did change it
Oh, right.
from the layout as shown on the plans.
Accept that amendment to the motion.
Excellent. Second it again?
Second, yep.
Okay. All in favor, Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Ms. Hagman Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that is passed.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Thank you.
pictures.
Yeah,
you.
This was great. Thanks a lot. And we'll sign and get
So
everything
we'll sign it and
done.
file with the clerk and then we'll send you a copy.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Safe travels, Stow.
I'll see you in the morning.
Go right ahead.
All right, so, oh yeah, did you talk about your discussions with
I
Denise?
didn't, actually, I forgot all about
You
it.
should say that.
It's tomorrow morning.
All right, great, discussion with Denise.
9:30 to 11:30 at Pompacitic Community Center. My special guest tomorrow is the fire chief.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to let's go back to the draft proclamation policy since we already started on that. So, any discussion? As I keep pulling it up. Ellen, you have your hand up?
I'm trying to find it again.
I know, it's on
It was
So-
35, right?
Was that the 30? No,
No.
that was
No.
that was the other one. I guess one thing I just wanted to bring up when we discussed the proclamation, was it only last year? It was more than that.
It was 2 years
Anyway,
ago.
we had talked about trying to particularly tie proclamations to things that are happening in town.
Mhm.
Sort of to make it more than just a piece of paper. So it doesn't have to be in the policy necessarily, but I do feel like that's an important thing to remember, and the list gets a little, I mean, I guess when I think, the proclamation policy is more about the sort of big issue kind of things, I think. And it gets into a lot of smaller details, and I just don't wanna go overboard on like, oh, let's have a proclamation for,
Yeah.
Anyway, so, but I just wanted to remind the board, we had talked about that was a
Yes.
important part of doing these recognitions is to also, there was a lot with the DEI committee initially, and I'm sorry if that's not what it's called. Is that what it's called?
No, we've changed it to be that.
You were doing different, partnership with the library or whatever, and I think that's a really important part of any proclamations that we're, same with NASHA doing things, whether it's at the library or elsewhere, that it's important to give people an opportunity to do more than just sign a piece of paper.
Yes. I feel like this opens it up more than what we had initially. Like, I think that, and I do think that that's an important thing to remember, because that was a huge part of sort of our initial discussions about it. But this, I feel like it opens it up to more opportunities for the board to be able to do it if there is an instance that comes up that seems like something that the board wants to do.
I agree with Ingeborg too, that the language is actually really helpful, that government piece that I didn't realize that's how you get around some of these issues.
On a joke aside, when I read, because I didn't understand there was a law that said government speech, I was thinking Big Brother, from 1984. And I was thinking, this is very creepy. Now I understand that it comes from a general law, so that's nice.
I do like the idea of having a policy on it, though, So, yes.
I have a question.
Yep.
So since I've been on the board, we have done a couple, I think they're proclamations on breast cancer awareness and, that are not, they're just feel good proclamations. We don't do anything in town. We don't, there's nothing. We did just have the wetland day thing, but we're gonna do something in town. So does this then change those kinds of proclamations? I mean, we can still, they're to the benefit of Stow, it's awareness. It's not a local nonprofit. I mean, this is where, to Hector's comment, out-of-state organizations, we do have Massachusetts located things for those. But, so I guess does anything in this language change some of these generic?
I would argue that since I've been on the board, any of the proclamations we've done, we've tried really hard to tie to something, some kind of education in town, whether it be for Black History Month, for Pride Month. I feel like that we worked or not we, but like the library had programming. There were other things happening on Stow TV, so that it wasn't just an empty kind of, the town is doing this, but then there's nothing to back it up. And I think that goes to Ellen's point about like wanting to make sure that there is some education.
That's why I was getting a little jaded about issuing these things. But, so perhaps in the proclamation request form.
Yeah.
We should just add something that says what activities might be associated with it. And even if it's just, some.
What additional town activities?
Or what additional town initiatives or something, activities, meetings. And maybe that is background of the person, event, organization, issue, or activity. That's exactly what it is. So maybe that's fine. And then when these come in, like when I came in with the request for the Wetlands Day, I would have filled this out and said, we're gonna do this, so that if we're doing any of these other generic month of, right? That we're actually taking some action on it. I think this form is good then, I like it.
Okay, hang on one second, Hector. Denise, you had a...
Yes, so I do wanna clarify, so since in the last 2 years, we've only done 4 proclamations. The breast cancer, the wetlands, those weren't true proclamations,
Okay.
those were sort of a recognition of awareness.
Okay.
The proclamations that we've done, we did Black History Month last year, Black History Month this year, Pride Month last year, and Native American Heritage Month in November. Those are the true proclamations that have been issued.
Okay.
And I will say, even if we did choose to do formal proclamations for those other items you identified, I do think it's covered under the, supporting public awareness campaigns that have the potential to enhance public health, safety, or wellness. And I would say, I do think there's a little bit of a difference in a initiative put forward by employees to the board versus residents to the board. So I think if the employees or the DEI group or a specific department says, this is a proclamation that we think and we're working on, and because it would go hand in hand with something, versus a resident group saying, well, we want to have a proclamation on this. I think there would be a little, I would think there'd be a little different review of the proclamation versus something that, the library wants National Book Month or whatever it is. So I do think that ones that come internally are coming to support an event or an activity or a purpose. I did just add in the form, if it helps, under the background of the person, event, organization section, just a question that says, will there be activities or events planned to celebrate this proclamation? If so, provide details.
Okay.
And so if there is an event being held in response to this, because one of the questions in here, I think is in the form, is do you want this to be issued at a meeting, or is there a specific
Right.
how do you want this presented? So, they could say, well, we're having a Pride March and we'd like it to be presented there, something to that effect.
Okay.
But so I did just add that into the form.
Okay, and thank you for differentiating between these generic recognitions versus proclamations.
Right.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay.
Hector, Ellen?
And I think all that discussion about activities along with the proclamation are very important, but I don't want to discourage people from submitting a proclamation just because they haven't planned any activities around it. Although, from my limited experience, it used to be that the library had all these activities planned even before the select board started making any proclamations, so
Yeah, for sure.
we're kind of catching up with them now. But yeah, it's great to have activities with it. I just wanna make sure that however it's worded, it still encourages the submission of a proclamation even if you don't have any activities planned.
Right, so the question just says, will there be? It's
Okay,
not,
good.
it's not a requirement, it just asks if there are. And I do think, kind of like what we've done with other sort of acknowledgements, it helps to promote their event, to then
Right.
say, yes, we're doing X, Y, and Z, which then the board could talk about. But no, there's no requirement, at least not in the form that I just added.
Good.
Ellen?
So I'm gonna disagree, and I actually was gonna ask that we put a line in that says we encourage, educational activities to be tied to this request. Cause I actually think it is critical to, and the library didn't always, we have a great librarian right now, but we didn't always have any kind of activities at the library, so I just think it just means more to the town. I don't wanna start having just proclamation after proclamation, and it's only been 4, so it's not that many, but that don't give people, because what we're trying to do is raise awareness, and if there's just someone reads the proclamation and that's it, they're like, well, I
There's
don't
nothing
understand. I mean,
attached to it, yeah.
if you think of Pride Month, there's a lot of people who still need, wanna hear more and want to learn more.
Right.
And so it's really important to have at least one event somewhere, and Stow TV can run any number of shows,
Right.
But I think I would love to see it be not a requirement, but that an encouraged
Yeah.
statement.
I would
Sort of
agree
the
with that.
equivalent of what you
Okay,
wrote on
so-
the application.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
So I have, under the statement of purpose, I've added a new last section. So right now I have, the town encourages events and activities coordinated to recognize and support the, I don't know what the word is,
The purpose behind the
purpose.
proclamation.
Yeah, that's to support the purpose behind I'll just say the proclamation.
Or you could just say the background purpose or something like that.
So the town encourages events and activities coordinated to recognize and support the purpose behind the proclamation. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right.
I still have an issue with the number one exception, because it says outside the town of Stow, but it doesn't say out, then it says outside the state, which means it includes the state, because further up it says state organizations.
I think I know why it's there.
Well, I'll be honest, in my time, even outside of here, we get things all the time from national groups saying,
Right.
oh, your town should submit a proclamation, we asked you to do this.
Right.
I think this gives you the ability to say no.
Right.
And say it's not in our policy.
It
But
was-
if it was something like the NAACP, you could say, yes, this is something we want to put forward. But I think it gives you an out for some of these sort of spam emails that
childhood
just come out.
cancer, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was that was the one, Courtney. So, yeah, but I think that's it too. I think it's just, because it could be, I don't know.
Well, and there is the different levels. I mean, like we were talking before, the
Right.
recognitions, and I mean, proclamations are basically a big piece of paper that someone
Right.
wants to present somewhere. And
Right.
if it's really about, like, I mean, I think an example would be, the recent hate crime, and we want to make a statement. We made a statement. We didn't have to wait for the NAACP or
Right, or anybody to, yeah.
defamation to ask us to do it.
Right.
But they could have, and then, but we would have probably done what we did as opposed to a big proclamation. I mean, it was much more effective actually with the town administrator's statement, but.
I just wonder if we can make that first sentence just say outside the state of Massachusetts, instead of restricting it to the town of Stow.
I think the idea though, too, Hector, is that if the town of Stow is going to make a proclamation about the town of Stow, you want it to be about things that are happening in the town of Stow. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's lots of stuff that happens all over the country and all over the world,
Right.
and we're not going to weigh in on that because it doesn't directly impact us in this particular situation. So I think that, to me, is more it kind of narrows the focus a bit, so that we're not.
But we imply further up in this policy that we accept state incentivized proclamations that aren't, where they may not have offices or chapters in our town.
Right, but we could have people who live in our town who are members of
Right.
that organization.
But yet, we're saying unless a local chapter or office is located in the town.
It's not a restriction.
But it's
It's not a restriction.
Yeah, I think
I
that
just
we're.
find it confusing because of we encourage in-state stuff, but yet here we're saying only in-town stuff, almost. And it is left, I didn't understand that generally has a legal definition that it's not necessarily binding.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a little contradictory.
So if this is a policy, and with respect to law, in order of standing, first the law, then the regs, then policy comes in last, and it's just a guidance document.
Okay,
So
maybe it's just my confusion and
I
if
think that
everybody
if
else-
some wonderful, breast cancer isn't in the town of Stow, but those are things, the kind of things that, because it keeps going on here, number 8
Right.
above says recognizing other exceptional events, activities, or people, and that is broad, that could be broad.
Right,
So I think that between the general language in 8 above, as I think, and this is a generally not be issued, this basically means don't come to us with something that's, too self-serving,
Right,
then we can't balance it with one of the items above.
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
Never mind that.
Well, so number 1 above says memorializing exemplary events or days including certain times of celebration, blah, 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 and that could be months, right?
Right.
So, okay.
All right. Courtney, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just, sorry, Hector, I agree with the, idea that that's a useful statement, and, because it just says, generally those, those things may not be accepted,
Okay.
so.
All right. I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the proclamation policy as amended at this meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor, roll call. Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Ms. Hageman Clark?
Hi.
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, that is unanimous. All right, we're gonna go back up to reviewing the draft animal policies. Denise, do you wanna?
I actually have Dolores here.
Oh, great.
Dolores is the one who worked on these with the Board of Health
Hello,
and the Council on
Dolores.
Aging, and so I'm gonna turn it over to her.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. We started working on this policy with the Board of Health to help out with a therapy animal at the Council on Aging. But then we also looked at other situations, and it actually started as one policy. And then the Board of Health asked if we could make it a service animal policy and a therapy animal policy. And I think some of the separating of it, some words were lost, so we'll have to fix it a little bit. But the service animals are the ones protected again by the ADA. Very specifically trained to provide services for an individual. And it's very limited on what questions you can ask someone about their disability. So that's why we thought let that come to HR so that we can be very aware of what questions we can legally discuss. The therapy animals are a little bit different, and whereas the service animal is supposed to stay focused on performing duties for its handler, the therapy animal is supposed to interact, and the intention of interaction is usually to decrease stress, decrease blood pressure, decrease heart rate. You see the therapy animals being used in the library for children to read to, at senior centers to help people calm down. And also they use them a lot at college campuses during finals, bring them in for the students to pat. So they are supposed to interact with people, unlike the service animals who are focused on their tasks. And the one thing that we want to require of service animals performing services in town buildings is that they have the Good Canine Citizen certification by the American Kennel Association, and then just all the licenses and vaccines that are required in their hometowns.
Okay,
That's where we ended up.
excellent. Questions? Ellen, you had a question.
I have a few.
Okay.
And actually, I've never been 100% clear on the difference between service and therapy animals, so this was really helpful. Just my first, on the service animals, the only question, and I just lost track if you were just saying this, in terms of, is that where there's a specific certification that's required of service animals for training?
No, service animals don't need the certification. They can be trained by almost anyone, although if any of you have seen the needs dogs, how they're trained, I was fortunate to see them. There's a group at the MCI Framingham, a group of women who are incarcerated who do the training, and it is amazing what they train those dogs to do.
Yeah.
But it is truly to provide a service that a handicapped person can't provide for themselves, or
So
a disabled person.
I was just wondering, in terms of the language in the, I work for a group that actually has a very specific, like what the requirements of training are, and I'm just worried that it's a little too vague in this, for the service animals, just says it's trained. It's like, well, everybody has a different definition of what a trained dog is. If you walk in the woods, you find out, someone says their dog's, I'm totally under my control, except for he's jumping on me, or something. So I guess I would like to have, I felt like in general, the language in these two documents was a little too general. Has council looked at these yet? Not yet. No, okay. So my other question was on the therapy one, the first, under number 8A, have an undiscriminating love for the people. It's like, these aren't this is not like quantifiable, so I guess, but that again, that's the one that has to be certified, right? So,
That's correct.
but I just think a statement like that is sort of, it's,
Very subjective.
yeah, it's very subjective. So, and in fact,
Actually,
that whole list is pretty subjective, so.
I took that line from the Wallingford, Connecticut animal policy,
Yeah.
but we can certainly take it out.
I think, I would be interested to see if council would, as a policy, those are not, that whole list is pretty subjective. I mean, except for the vaccinations and, so I totally support this. I think it's a great idea to be clear on these, but, I didn't think the language was great in terms of how enforceable, basically.
Hector?
I noticed that these policies are very canine focused. What happens when the service animal is not a canine?
Funny you should ask. Under the ADA, the only service animals can be dogs or miniature horses.
Miniature horses?
Interesting.
Okay,
Yes.
interesting. I was thinking monkeys,
Yeah.
but okay, and miniature horses I
Nope.
get.
Not yet, anyway.
So, go ahead.
Nope, keep going.
So, I'm also wondering about the training that you said for therapy animals. Again, so if we have the restriction for service animals are only dogs or miniature horses, do we assume or should we specify that the same restriction applies for therapy animals?
No, it's much broader.
We have more latitude with therapy animals to describe what they are. I do want to just mention they're different from comfort or emotional support animals.
Oh, okay.
So if they're, oh, sorry,
Because I was thinking, I've heard of people that tried to get on with their boa constrictor and their peacock on flights, calling them therapy animals, but okay.
so stop me if I'm wrong, but a therapy animal is supposed to provide a service to the greater public, and a service animal is supposed to provide a service to their handler? That's
correct.
really what
So
the
it's not-
difference is?
okay, now
And then
I see.
an emotional support animal is sort of
for
in the,
the
it's like, it's more in the, they're under the control of their handler for an emotional situation.
Okay.
So a therapy dog, again, as I understand it, needs to have a heck of a lot more training, because the liability is that you are putting that animal out there to interact with the public.
Okay,
Whereas a service animal,
That
they
makes
go
more
through the so say you're visually impaired, your service animal has to be trained to your specific needs.
Okay.
If you have seizure disorder, it's a different kind of training that the animal goes through. So, right? Am I wrong? Did I get that, Dolores?
You're right on
All
target.
right, perfect.
and my only other question is, what about allergies? What happens in that instance?
Right. What's the repercussion for the other employees?
Yeah,
That would be covered under the American with Disabilities Act, and we would have to accommodate someone with allergies either by not allowing the animal near them or separating offices, whatever we would need to do.
okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Ingeborg.
I have witnessed the NEEDS program as well, and I have seen service dogs in action, and they're very, as you said, specific to their owners. They just sit by their owners, they do what their owners say, they don't even interact with people that come in. I've also had therapy animals come into UMass Lowell where I teach, and it's just a joy when they come in. And they literally just walk around the halls and meet and greet and wag their tails and smile. And so I personally think this is great. I think for those that don't know, the Canine Good Citizen course is incredibly it's you have to go through several courses till you get to the Canine Good Citizen, and to get past that is very detailed, very challenging. So I think I like the fact that there's this proof of training. I had a friend go through it with a pretty crazy, what are they called? Certain dog that's very, very hyper, and I've never seen that dog. It's just perfect dog. When I first met it, it was like, oh yeah, just stay away from me. But anyway, so I think these are very good. I like them. With respect to the comments about the vagueness associated with the service, I'll see, I guess if council can review that, I think that's probably a good idea. So I just think it's a wonderful thing, and overall I endorse it, so.
Great. Courtney. No, she's muted.
She can unmute.
Okay. Does she forget she's muted though?
She forgot she's muted. There she goes.
Sorry, I was coughing, so I interject that. I agree, I'm very much in support of these policies. A thought on the section of therapy animal must, the language there, if we could take it out of the anthropomorphic realm and into something that is quantifiable. I love for people he, she meets, well, those animals are super friendly. So, that's probably, somebody could go through and get that language sorted so that it was quantifiable and appropriate. I love highly trained animals. Watching them work is just so beautiful, and I think it's really lovely to have to include them in our spaces where it works.
Excellent. Denise.
For that number 8, would you prefer it to say the therapy animal should, and not must, so that because it does, up above, we do have vaccinations, we do have be housebroken, be licensed by the city or town clerk, and make it more of a recommendation on how the dog's demeanor should be versus requirements of a dog that's not quantifiable.
So 8A could even be just scratched, because B takes it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, really, yeah.
I think a lot of it is covered by the training that they have to do, though. You know what I mean? So it's like it's almost like 8. A lot of 8 could be scratched and really just have it be.
And most of it's already mentioned.
The licensing, but it's already mentioned in 4. That's already so. I would argue that 8 could be scratched altogether.
Well, I do like some of these things about scared by loud noises or sudden movements.
But and stop me if I'm wrong, because I don't know about the Canine Good Citizen thing, but I would assume that would have to be something that they also.
Well,
if you're
okay.
trained, you know what I mean? So it's like
inference.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's got to be covered under the Canine Good Citizen training.
Yeah.
I think 8I and 8J though should kind of remain.
So J is in there already.
Yeah.
J's in there.
Vaccinations are in
Vaccinations and
It's in
licensing is
different
in a
places.
different place.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying I think
Okay,
that it's
yeah.
redundant at this point. Anyway, that would be my.
Do you want to take out 8 altogether?
Hold on, let's see.
I think I saw every part of it in something else.
Well, maybe we can just have a sentence that
I take
just
it
have a
being scared
calm,
by
gentle,
loud.
friendly, and happy demeanor, right? Just have one sentence.
Say that again, Ingeborg.
Just have 8D.
So the therapy animal should have a calm, gentle, friendly, and happy demeanor.
I think so.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like in theory it should be covered in 3.
Right.
Yes, but that is by reference. So if someone doesn't really know this, this just makes it, someone can pull this out of their desk drawer and say, he growled at me or something. Or I remember there's one, just housebroken and not urinate or defecate. I had a employee who brought his dog in and he repeatedly would urinate wherever he wanted. And I was like, all right, this has just gotta stop, so it's just so funny, but.
There's a typo in 3. There's evaluation of an evaluation. I'm not sure what it was supposed to be, but after the Obedience Foundation Skills Course and evaluation of an American Kennel Club evaluation.
Yeah, one of
There's
those
a few
evaluations.
grammatical issues in both policies.
But those could be cleaned up, right?
I marked up a bunch of this for typos and sent it to Denise and Dolores
Okay.
previously. I didn't wanna
Awesome.
bore the meeting.
Nice job.
Thanks, Courtney.
Sure.
I will add, I got to see the women at MCI Framingham do their training.
Oh, nice.
It's incredible. I mean, the training is incredible anywhere, but to be able to do it, these women have a purpose in life while they're incarcerated, it's pretty incredible.
That's great.
So, all right, are we ready to go?
I'm ready for motions if you all are.
To find a great motion. I move to approve the service, should we do 2 motions? That would be
Yeah, I
great.
think so.
To approve the service animal in the workplace policy as amended at this meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Ms. Hageman Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Costanzas?
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. That is approved.
And do these have to be approved by
Unanimous.
council before we put
They
implement
technically
policies?
don't, but, cause I would like to, with your
Well,
permission.
we're approving the should I say we're approving the drafts? Say what you're saying first.
No, if you're approving them, you're
Yeah,
approving it.
okay.
Right.
The draft was if you didn't want it, if you wanted to keep talking about it for
Right.
meetings. No, I would ask that, with your permission, once you approve the therapy dog, if you approve the therapy dog, that we allow Juno to start visiting our council on aging, while we have council review this for any changes that they may suggest.
Okay.
But he is fully certified, he's met all his criteria, he has all of his certifications, and they are very anxious to have the dog back in Pompo.
Okay.
Maynard just got
I know, they just got a support
Otis.
at the
a support animal.
police station, right?
Otis.
Otis.
So this opens it up for all departments, yes?
Oh, believe me, we've already been asked. I think I need a comfort cat for my office.
That's fine. All right,
So
I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the therapy animals in the workplace policy as amended at this meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fresha?
Aye.
Ms. Hageman Clark? Mr. Costanzas? Ms. Sturgis?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, let's move on to like policying and statementing all over the place tonight. Okay. So Denise, you want to talk about these?
Yes, let me just, thank you, Dolores.
Thank you, Dolores.
Thank you,
Have a
Dolores.
good evening.
Dolores.
Did you make any changes to the service animal
I
one?
was wondering that myself.
The motion was as amended, but I don't think you amended anything, right?
I think that I think it's amended as Courtney sent
So,
typos.
okay, so we'll use that, yes, so she has some grammatical
Yep,
changes,
yep.
okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yes, so, let me scroll to. So these were as a result of conversations that we've had over the last several months. I had given you some sample policies from or statements from other communities. When I tried to draft one for the board, it really came out to be, there were multiple different kinds of statements. There was anti-racism statements, anti-hate statements. So I put 2 of them together, one of each for you to review, talk about. It's a starting point for you. I know you got an email today from someone regarding the statements, so it's just, it was a discussion point for you all to sort of run with.
Okay.
I'm happy to get more statements if you want from other communities. I only got the 3 the last time, so
Okay.
however you want to handle it.
Excellent. All right, I will open the floor for questions and comments. Let's start with the anti-hate statement because it's the first one in the document. Hector, you have your hand raised?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for bringing all this forward, and I'm glad we're doing it. And I'm really looking forward to passing something here. I'm not sure if there's a benefit to having 2 separate statements. Honestly, I recognize the reason to have racism segregated from other types of hate. But I was wondering if a single statement that says racism and hate is a better benefit, just because racism is hateful. And you can't have hate without racism.
Well,
Did I say
no,
that
that's
right?
not true.
No, that's not true.
You can have hate without being racist.
That's true.
But
You can't have hate without, you can't
have
have hate
racism without hate.
discrimination.
yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
So if I may, so the reason I did them as two, I had them originally as one. But then when I got to all of the other isms that we wanted to cover, I thought, well, now we have a policy that's just, it was focusing more on racism, and then how do I add all the other sexism and, colorism and everything else that was mentioned in the anti-hate. So it was more difficult for me to try and combine those into one. If you want to take the two and come back with a draft of one, but I struggled with how to put them both in one and still give the proper attention that they needed, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying, yeah. Okay, I can understand that then. We're just talking about the anti-hate right now?
Yep.
Okay, that's all I have then for that.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
I basically had the same sort of confusion and not really decided on what I think is the right, I sort of lean towards one, but I hadn't picked apart all the language to see what else needs to be added.
I like the comment we got in the email this morning, or today, about the anti-hate, the sentence, "We believe in the fair treatment of all humans," that's recommended that we say fair and equitable treatment. And I'm okay with that amendment, because, when you talk about equity, you talk about, anyway, there's 4 different key definitions that go on with, social justice, and equitable is certainly a good one to add in there.
So the email that you referenced, that will be in our packet next week. It did come in after it doesn't mean that your point is not taken. It's just if anyone's like, what email did you get? It will be in our packet next week because it missed the deadline.
Right, so it's an email from, I'll just specify here.
It's from Abby Morgan.
That's from Abby Morgan.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that was great. A great change. It's hard, right? The statement, the anti-racism statement is, and I know I said we were talking about one and not the other, but I guess we're gonna talk about both. Because I'm the chair and I'm gonna do it. So I do like the kind of depth of this statement where it's really like, we're recognizing these facts, we're doing this, like, these are the things that we're hoping to change, these are the policies that we're doing, like, it is more, obviously the anti-hate one is a more broad kind of one, and the only thing I worry about if we just had the one is that we really could take any of these other isms and write a statement on all of them, and so I don't want to dilute, I'm on that fence of like, I don't want to dilute the idea of just sort of grouping everything together, but at the same time, if we do, I don't know what the answer is, because maybe we do 20 different,
Right.
but
Right.
I also feel like then that would dilute it as well, right?
If you
Or would it? I don't know.
If you over define something, you have narrower and narrower
Right.
and narrow interpretations. And
Right.
if you have something that's open with a general goal and a general statement, then there is still room for interpretation and application, in my opinion.
It could also be seen as we do have the general anti-hate statement, and racism is one of the worst forms of hate, which I guess there is a benefit to having a separate anti-racism statement. Oftentimes in the racial justice circles, it's strongly believed that if you address racism, you're addressing almost all other forms of hate or discriminatory behaviors against any other group. And that's why racism is separate. So it kind of goes back and forth between, do you have two different statements? Do you combine them all as one? I can see Denise's point, it's a little hard to combine them as one. We generally hate hate, but we really hate racism. Is basically what we'd be saying. And I'm okay with that. And I agree with, what Abby said, that it should be fair and equitable treatment of all human beings.
Okay.
Did we lose our focus here? So what, are we talking about combining them or not combining them?
I think that, I don't wanna walk out of this meeting without doing something. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like the anti-hate statement is important. I feel like both of them are important. And
I would just, there's no,
I know
there's no
there's
requirement to approve them tonight, so if you wanna think about it, if you wanna look at it,
Yeah.
I mean, this was not for you, obviously, this is the first time you're seeing them, so
Right.
this was not intended for you to approve them if you wanna, that's not,
Yeah,
so feel free to think on it, or,
yeah.
and I welcome suggestions on how to combine them equitably, I guess, because that's what I struggled with.
Right, or whether, I think it's been helpful to hear people's thoughts, and I would like to have more time to think about what, that balance, and maybe hear from other people if they wanna, chime in on like separate people. It feels like in some way, I sort of like the fact that the anti-hate one's sort of very concise,
It is.
even though it has a long list of the sort of ways that hate comes out.
Right.
But I also particularly like on the anti-racism statement, the bullets that you added around specific things that sort of, make us look at ourselves more specifically, and I think that's
Right.
important, so.
Right.
I'm gonna keep going back and forth, but maybe by next meeting I'll be ready, so.
Yeah, I would like to table the rest of it until we've had more of a chance to wrap our arms around it.
Since I'm not gonna be here next meeting, there's a couple of comments I'd like to make about the racism statement.
Do you wanna make them now, or do you wanna wait until, we can certainly wait till you're back,
Oh, okay.
if that's okay with everyone else.
I wouldn't mind, I would like to hear, since
Yeah.
we've started, just
Yeah.
because as I'm thinking about it going forward, so,
Yeah.
In the bullet statements, the third one says, we know that many forms of racism are systemic, often set by state and federal policies beyond our control. That's sort of like we're punting. I think that statement is more effective if it just says, we know that many forms of racism are systemic. They can be set by state, federal, town, county, all sorts of places. We're not excluded from having set systemic racism.
So you think it should end at systemic?
Correct.
Okay.
or even that often supported by government policies.
Yeah.
And drop the beyond our control, since it's,
I wouldn't take the town's responsibility out of,
right,
or,
But I don't know that we do, because later on it talks about what the town is doing policy-wise in order to do that. So I think, yes, there could be state and federal policies that are outside of their ones that we, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, I also,
there's implicit systemic racism that we may not even be aware of. And I wouldn't want to take away our responsibility for what we may have and don't even realize we have. There's systemic racism, and it's on all levels of government and life. So I wouldn't qualify it and kind of
Yeah, you
say,
don't
we're
have to
not,
define
it's
it.
not us,
I agree
it's
with that.
them.
Just end with systemic. I agree with that.
And the other comment that Abby had pointed out was the use of the word Hispanic. I know there's a lot of discussion about what is the right way to address people from Latin American regions and countries. I've had one Latin American person say, I wish they would just refer to me as Latin American. Latinx is becoming very negative. Most people don't like it. I had not heard of Latine that Abby had suggested, but I know Hispanic means of Spanish origin. And many Latin American people are not necessarily of Spanish origin.
So what were you suggesting?
I would have said Latin American.
Oh, Latin
since
American.
we are taking some time to think about it more.
Yep, I
We
see
can
that.
see what other
Yep.
options there are, but just using the word Hispanic actually excludes people from Central and South America and the Caribbean.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so do you wanna, for discussion at our next meeting or the next few meetings, do you want me to add slash Latine as Abby recommended?
Sure,
And then we can discuss that?
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
My comment on that is that it seems like Latin American might be the most generic, and if it's not offensive, it might be useful to consider the largest term to capture all the people.
And that could go with Asian American as well.
Well, I mean, Latin America is not the same as the US, it's a different sort of a continent. And so Asian American is this continent, theoretically, or I think that's a different distinction.
Yeah, often Asian American is referencing Asian origin people that live in the United States, while Latin America is talking about Central and South America.
Wait, so then why would you say Latin American? Are you talking about when you
People of
suggested that?
From Latin
People of Central or South
But they're living in
American
the United
origins.
States, same as,
Well, all of the,
I don't
this
see
is
the
referencing
distinction,
to
but-
all people that are living in the United States. Latin American is more of having origins. For example, I would be considered European because my origins are from Europe, even though I'm living in the United States. I'm not called European American.
so, I don't it's all right, we don't have to keep talking about it.
I think I'm gonna, just because we now have two more big things we need to talk about tonight, I think I'm just gonna say let's table this till next meeting. All right. Denise.
So I'm going to, I will add them as, I will update the drafts as we talked about. Do you want to include it for further discussion at the next meeting where Hector will not be here? Or do you want me to just push it off until the March 28th meeting? I know you'll be remote for that meeting.
Right.
Do you want me to just
I'm
put it on the 28th?
I'm okay pushing it off till the 28th because I really would like to, I would like to look at really, because they're, yeah.
Okay.
All right, Denise, would you like to give us a, oh, I know you're writing, sorry.
May I ask, can we do the regional school agreement? Cause
Oh,
I know
yeah.
Leah's been on the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
Was she?
Because she, her plans got changed with no school today, so if we can take her item, if that would be
yes, absolutely.
okay to you.
I'm off the hook.
Yes. Hi, Leah.
Hi guys.
All right,
Yeah, I had nothing to do tonight.
yep, you know. Jump on all these meetings. All right, hit us.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'll stay as long as you want, answer as many questions as you want. I can kind of how would you like to do this? Do you want me to present to you the regional agreement, or would you just like to ask questions? Do you want me to go over the major changes?
I would love a top level major changes kind of summary of it. And then Ellen has been sort of our select board person who's been more in the know. So if you want to do that, and then Ellen, if you want to jump in with anything, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. So Ellen has been a part of the Regional Agreement Amendment Advisory Committee for longer than I have. Mary McCarthy, who is a former school committee member, started this process a few years back when we realized that the school committee composition, at the time it was 8 people, was no longer in compliance with the Supreme Court decision of 1 person, 1 vote. And so we needed to kind of reassess how many representatives each of the 3 towns has on the school committee. And in doing that assessment, what we learned is that we should increase the number to 11, ultimately giving every town 1 additional representative. So that kind of kicked off this need to reassess the regional agreement in that regard. But we did a full-blown reassessment. Excuse me. Thank you, honey, but I'm not going to take it right now if you don't mind. Just shut my door, please. Sorry. They're trying to give me dinner. So that kind of opened the proverbial Pandora's box, and we started trying to make all the changes that we found to be necessary. So Mary, in an effort to be kind of fiscally responsible, decided to take this on herself instead of outsourcing it to our legal counsel, which would have been very expensive. And she formed the RAAAC, of which Ellen has been a tried and true member. And that group kind of rewrote the agreement. I will say that although it looks very different, the old agreement to this new proposed agreement, kind of substantively, there are only a couple of minor changes that that voters need to be aware of. And that's where the cover letter comes in, which Mr. Brian Boyle of Bolton Advisory Committee created. He's also a member of the RAAAC. And it basically outlines some of those substantive differences, although once you do that comparison, you realize, oh, there's actually not really a lot that's changing. So that's kind of the high level stuff. Ellen, anything that I should also add to that?
Just that the process was very iterative. We went back and forth with Desi a lot because Desi fundamentally runs the roost in terms of rules around regional agreements.
Okay.
So I don't know how many times Mary did a bunch of separate meetings, and then just recently in the last few months, Leah's been taking the lead on getting the final things cleared with them. So that's the other body that we have to get approval from, so.
Yeah, because all regional agreements, basically the amendment process in the current regional agreement lays this out, but this is by law as well, that the process is this, that the school committee needs to endorse any amendment to the regional agreement. That vote is set to take place tomorrow night. We'll see if the school committee approves this most recent draft. If they do, then the regional agreement, and by the way, the draft that we put before the school committee, like Ellen said, had to be kind of vetted through Desi because they are going to later endorse it to the Commissioner of Education. So we did that. We're going to get the school committee's approval perhaps tomorrow night. Then the regional agreement draft that the school committee has endorsed has to go into all 3 of the town's warrants and be voted upon at town meeting, and ultimately needs to be approved by a majority vote at all 3 town meetings. Once that happens, it then goes to the commissioner who has final say. The commissioner could theoretically say no, and the process would have to kind of start over again, and whatever feedback the commissioner gives to us at that time would need to be brought back to the towns at the next town meeting. We're hoping that because we've done such a great job with vetting this through Desi over the last couple of years, that they have helped us through anything that the commissioner would find problematic.
Great.
So if you're looking at the cover letter in your meeting packet, Brian did a really nice job of giving you a brief introduction. not only about kind of why this was necessary, but also about the process in the RAAAC and how that was a very representative group, including town leaders, school committee members, and residents. As you go through that cover letter, you'll see kind of any of the proposed changes that we thought were meaningful enough that we wanted to bring it to the public's attention. Ultimately, the regional agreement is only about 10 pages long. It's not like this super dense document, but some of the concepts within it can be a little arcane. So if you guys have any questions, you let me know. But I'm just gonna fly through this cover letter to identify all the major changes, and then we can take it from there.
Sure.
So the first piece is about the membership, right? We had to change from 8 to 11. That's pretty straightforward. The way that school committee vacancies will be managed, it's by law, but we basically are gonna maintain the process that we've been using, more or less. We're also proposing a change for the start and end of a school committee member's term to sync up better with the school year. And that is also being vetted through the Charter Review Committee of Stow, Stow being the only town that articulates when terms begin and end. The school committee powers and duties, we're just adding that. It doesn't have to, it's not a necessary part of an agreement, but we decided the RAAC thought it was a good idea to put it in there, but it's all kind of articulated in MGL. We also maintain the notion that any school that's shared by the 3 towns has to be kind of geographically central. We entered this new piece about emergency building use just because DESE wanted us to, in case something happens and children need to be moved. The piece about the district budget, the only things that really change here is that, one, we've added language that requires the school committee to consider Prop 2.5 when passing their budget, and also introduces or kind of codifies the need for the superintendent to hold a quasi-tri-town, as we know it to be, and that actually just happened tonight. The superintendent is not compelled to do it, but he has already started doing that, so that will continue. The way that we apportion operating costs is just a little bit better defined, meaning it's based upon foundation enrollment, which it always has been, and not just student enrollment. And foundation enrollment is a really complicated factor that comes from DESE, that basically says, this is how many students Bolton is responsible for, this is how many students Stow is responsible for, and they calculate your assessments based on that. The apportionment of capital costs is actually the piece that is changing quite a bit in the language, but not really substantively. So ultimately what DESE wants us to do is make sure that we're clear on how we assess the towns for capital costs on buildings that the school district owns, and then how capital costs will be managed on the buildings that the school district leases. The only school building that the district owns is the high school at this moment in time. The other piece that they asked us to add, which is it's in the new version, which it's in the school committee meeting materials right now. So you guys could see this. We added a piece that talked about capital costs for district-wide assets that are not buildings. So how would we assess the towns for a pickup truck that the school district is going to use for all of the towns, but it's going to be owned by the district? And it's ultimately going to be assessed as an operating cost. Any capital costs that are kind of done on leased buildings that the towns own, that will be, as it's always been, it will go through the town warrants. It will be kind of put through the capital planning process, which you guys are familiar with. The incurring of debt section, there's really no substantive change here. It's really just that we have pulled the Mass General Law into the regional agreement to make it clear the pre-existing authority of a regional school district to incur debt. This is actually how we incurred the debt for the 1998 high school renovation, so it's not new. We just added the language. Any town-owned asset, though, those leased buildings, the towns are responsible for incurring that debt, which is the way it's always been. Transportation language, we added a little something there simply because in order to get reimbursement from the state, this language has to be in there. So we put that in. We added that an E&D fund exists, and should exist as allowed by MGL. We have on the audit advisory committee, nothing's really changed there, but what we did add was some language that the school district is to conduct a forensic audit every 5 years. Although this might seem unnecessary or extreme, there's a little bit of history that is informing this. And the superintendent said at our last meeting that he is more than happy to have that done, even though it creates a little bit more work. It's not costly. I mean, it costs something. It's not prohibitively expensive, but he thought it was reasonable. And so he did say he supported that in the last meeting. Withdrawing from the district and adding new towns to the district, the language is largely, it's relatively similar. Well, I shouldn't say that. If you want to withdraw from the district, there needs to be complete agreement amongst all the towns. And the Mass General Law outlines how what a town needs to do to remove themselves. They have to include a long-range planning protocol. They have to get approval from the commissioner. They have to go through all of the budgetary assets. They need to understand what debt they are going to need to continue to pay even after separation. That's all in Mass General Law. But ultimately, what the new draft of the regional agreement would do is make it so that it's ultimately unanimous that a town withdraw. Any town looking to enter into the regional school district, it says right down at the bottom of at the very last row of the cover letter, it basically says that the amended regional agreement would have to be approved to admit a new town by a majority vote in all of the other member towns. So again, a unanimous vote would have to happen if we want to say, let Maynard enter the regional district or something like that. And that's it. And I'm happy to entertain questions.
Any questions from this board? No? I think my biggest question was about the incurring of debt. But just because it seemed like, to me it seemed like it had changed, but I'm glad that you said that the MGL, that the actual law is now in there. But that
and I
was my
will
only
say,
other
Megan,
question.
that in the new version of the cover letter,
Mhm.
I actually changed one sentence. And again, these are going to be in the meeting materials for the school committee meeting tomorrow night.
Mhm.
I added a sentence that basically says, this is not a change.
Mhm.
This is simply us inserting Mass General Law language of our pre-existing authority.
Mhm.
Authority that was actually exercised in 1998. And, we'll likely be we'll use the same exact process for the special town meeting in the fall for the new high school request.
Well, I'm just glad that you clarify it in the cover letter, because I think that to me was the only thing that had jumped out at first, but I'm glad. Any other questions? Ingeborg?
I just want to thank you for this
Yes.
very well organized presentation. It was
Yeah.
really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Leah.
Great. And I mean, any feedback you guys have, definitely happy to take it. This obviously has to go to the town meeting, and I would love for that, if we get that far, I would love for it to go smoothly. So any suggestions you have on my presentation or anything like that, please let me know.
Awesome.
I do have a question.
Oh, yep.
Leah, so you and I had spoken about capital costs, and in the draft, and I'm just trying to get back to it, there was a proposed change that I think has been made in the final version going ahead tomorrow night. Regarding the districts, I think all 3 districts have the threshold of capital being $10,000 or more, and now that amount is missing from the final version. So how does the proposal, let me get back to the new one, how does the proposal that does not include a threshold work with that section C under section 7?
Yeah, so section C, or section 7C is actually, it was the bane of our existence because Mass General Law defines capital costs as anything over $5,000 and more. And so the regional agreement cannot define capital costs as $10,000 or greater. So that puts us in a conundrum only because the lease agreements, the 3 lease agreements, which continue through 2026 and then will need to be reauthorized. The lease agreements basically say that any capital costs over $10,000 need to go through the capital planning process. And so that left this weird gap of all things, all capital costs between $5,000 and $10,000. And so the language that you will see in the materials tomorrow night is going back and forth with Desi, with Ross Mulcurran, who is the district's business manager. I even asked Brian Boyle. I think I sent it to the RAAC as well, just for their information. They are going to be in attendance at the meeting tomorrow night if they can. Trying to create language that will bridge Mass General Law, the regional agreement, and the leases. And so ultimately what the new language says is that anything over $5,000 needs to go through the capital reporting process, and Ross knows that. But it's only over $10,000 that it has to go through the town's capital planning process. Between $5,000 and $10,000, the district will pay for something, and then they will assess the towns, and I believe it says as an operating cost. So it's based upon foundation enrollment. So, you know, what might that be? It might be, I'm not a car guy, but like a carburetor on that truck that I was talking about. Right, like maybe that costs $6,000 and it falls into that weird window. And so how do we deal with those costs? So the language just basically tried to build a bridge around all of that. We talked a little bit about amending the 3 leases to bring that number down to 5, but that also seemed very difficult to do. And so we didn't want this gap to exist between the 5 and the 10. So, I mean, ultimately, nothing is really going to change in the way that money is, in the way that things are fixed, right? Like, there's always been things that have cost $6,000 that get fixed, like a broken window at Florence Sawyer or something like that. It's just that the language tries to, as carefully as it could, clarify how the money should flow to those vendors. Should it flow through the district budget, or should it flow through the town's budgets? Does that help?
Yes, so as part of the new, because the new section is 7C1, that the district shall develop a 5-year capital plan for each school. Is that threshold the 5,000 or the 10,000?
So by law, it has to be anything over 5. We have to bring everything over 5, but if the cost of something is between 5 and 10, the district, especially if it's like an emergency thing, the district could just pay for it and then charge it back to the towns through the assessment, through the quarterly assessment, is what I assume.
Okay. Even though our capital planning committee will only review those items over 10,000. It's still gonna be on the, they'll still be submitted on the capital plan that comes to us?
It'll still, yeah, so it should still be on the so I asked this of Desi and they said, yes, if it's over $5,000, it is a capital item by law. And so it has to be on those plans. But it's just that it might, you know, normally those things are things that have to happen immediately. They have to be fixed immediately. And so they couldn't wait until a town meeting vote, if you will. And so, you know, it's this weird gray area of these small items and how they get quickly paid for. And honestly, I think that up until this point, I don't know if the district has been charging the towns for these things. And, you know, with Ross being new to the position, he was kind of trying to investigate it for us to see, like, well, how have we handled historically capital items between $5,000 and $10,000? Because the leases say that under $10,000, we can do it ourselves. The district can do it.
So I guess I'm concerned on the reporting. So if it can't wait till town meeting and it won't be in the sort of traditional capital plan that has to be submitted by January 1st, when or how will we receive a list of those $5,000 to $9,999 items? Will it be as they're incurred? Will it be once a year before budget season? Like, here's everything that you're going to be assessed in fiscal 24's budget that we had to pay for?
Yeah, my assumption is that anything over $5,000 is in the capital plan. Because it is a capital cost, it has to go on the capital plan. But the difference is that anything between 5 and 10 could be, it doesn't have to be, but it could be purchased by the district and assessed, as opposed to waiting for you guys to incur the debt or pay for it through free cash and then just making it happen.
Right, no, I get that, but I guess we'll have to have a 5-year capital plan by January 1st. What if a window breaks on January 2nd? Will that be held till the following January 1st and come over on a list that says, last January 2nd, we replaced this item? Because we don't get that now. We don't know what's being paid for that's from $5,000 to $9,999. And I'm just curious how that's gonna come to us, or when that's gonna come to us.
Do you know, what about the things that are $2,000 even?
No, we don't see that stuff.
Right, so okay.
So I guess if we're changing that threshold to make sure that anything over 5 is considered capital, how is the town gonna be notified that that will be in our next year's assessment? If it misses that annual threshold, that's now gonna be a 5-year requirement, will it be on a quarterly basis? Like, these are the things that we've had to fix? And I don't assume it happens every day, but if there's now these new requirements, I wanna make sure that we understand as the town when we will be getting that notification.
Okay, I wrote a note and I think that this is just a process that hasn't been happening, perhaps. I think that the district has just been eating it. And that was unclear to Ross on how we've handled it in previous years.
Right, but even along that line, I'd like to know what the district has been eating. Like, is it gonna quantify in a total of, next year you're gonna have to pay an extra $100,000 because we've paid all these little things over the course of the year? Like, what amount are we talking about? And I mean, obviously, I now see you every Monday, so we can chat about it next week, or we can talk about it at one of our regular meetings. But that would be my concern, is if we're actually putting this into a regional agreement that needs to be followed, number one, how is the reporting gonna be done? And I'd like to know, even if it's the last few years, if there's a way to tell us how much of those 5,000 to 9,999 items we are talking about. If there's a way to figure that out.
Even frankly, an item that's $4,000, right? Like, that's not small money to a school district. And so how has the school district been supporting costs like that as they come along? I mean, on a district-owned asset, the district is responsible for it. And they would perhaps charge it through the assessment. I don't honestly know.
Right.
But I'm gonna make a note. How is the reporting happening? And also, how have those costs been managed in the past?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Improvements, right? I mean, it would be
Hopefully, I will have the answers for you at the meeting tomorrow
They
night.
shouldn't be charging us.
Right.
I didn't hear anything about this. Love it.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Leah?
The town clerk has her hand raised.
Sure.
Hi, Leah. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
So my question was the length of the term and when the term was up, because right now it's, we swear in right after the election and we get people in and they're going on. And so this year it'll be 22nd, actually, the Monday following. So And now it's being moved to June. And I know you said to follow along with the school year, but is there a specific time in June when that organization meeting is planned?
Yeah, so what the charter review committee is in possession of is my recommendation that it basically identifies when the terms start for all elected boards in the town, with the exception of the school committee.
Right.
That is to be determined by the regional school agreement. And then the regional school agreement has new language in it that says that the term shall begin at the June organizational meeting, which is established annually. And so it's typically like June 15th that we meet. We meet every 2 weeks. And so it's normally not the first week of June, but the second week of June. And that's established annually. And so what it says is that the term will begin with that meeting and the previous term will end with that meeting. But the only qualification in the regional agreement is that it's in June.
Okay.
And so the swearing in, would just have to happen at some point before that.
With an effective date of whatever the date is that the committee's choosing. Committee, would they ever consider having a reorganization meeting in July? So it's more of a fiscal year instead of a
no, they wouldn't.
Just picking a random date.
Yeah, so that meeting happens in June. And it's largely, to be honest, it's largely dependent upon the superintendent's evaluation. That is why we wanted to push this out, because the superintendent at this moment and in this cycle, and if this all doesn't pass, it will continue to be this way. The superintendent is currently being evaluated prematurely, long before he has actually had the opportunity to bring his goals through to fruition. That doesn't really happen until end of May, beginning of June. And so we don't want people rolling off the committee until that evaluation cycle can really be brought to a conclusion. And so it's not really necessarily about the fiscal year, it's mostly about that evaluation cycle that we're trying to capture inside a term of a school committee member, so that new members who have just rolled onto the committee are not voting on a superintendent's high stakes evaluation without all of the background knowledge that's necessary to do a good job with that.
Okay. All right. I'll figure out the logistics to be sworn in.
You're the best.
Yeah, I prefer the current system. I understand yours.
I know, I totally get it too, yeah.
It's a nightmare because we have term limits all over the place. All right, but that's okay. I don't have to deal with it for a few more years.
All
right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Leah? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Leah,
thanks, guys.
Go enjoy your dinner.
You have my email address, so let me know if you need anything.
Thank you.
See you on Monday, Denise.
I'll see you Monday. Can't wait.
All right, have a good night. All right, last but not least, Denise. Please give us a recap of your and the planning director's meeting with Linear.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So last Tuesday, Valerie Ortiz and I met with the CEO of Linear, as well as his, on-site manager and their counsel. Just to talk about the property, some of the difficulties they've been facing. They wanted to make sure we were aware that they have been making massive improvements, about $2 million worth to their current infrastructure. They had found the issue with their water system. Apparently it was hit by lightning at some point, and they didn't realize that the actual mains underneath were damaged as well as the system. So they are replacing those, and they are working on their water treatment system as well. So they don't envision any other water problems in the future. They hope that that is all resolved. As you know, they have lost some businesses, and they are losing 2 more in the near future. One is closing in April as a result of a retirement, and the other one is closing in the next year to 18 months. The the one that's closing in the year is going to Maynard, where several other businesses have gone to. So that will leave them almost half vacant with vacancies. They did extend the lease of some of their anchor stores, but there is some concern that they would not be extended any further if they're not able to fill the vacant positions in the plaza. As I think you all know, based on some Facebook posts, so they were able to work with Stow Fitness. Stow Fitness is in a month-by-month lease at Stow Fitness's request to try and build their business back up. Linear was more than happy to work with them. They worked with Emma's Cafe when they were there. So they really are trying to work with the businesses to make sure that they are stable and are able to try and grow their business. They did say that since Market Basket opened in Maynard, Shaw's revenue is down about 25%. So where does that leave us? They have one business currently interested in coming to the plaza. It is to the end cap that was previously housing Papagino's, and that is Starbucks. Mm-hmm. The only way Starbucks will agree to a lease is with a drive-through. It's the wrong side of the road. So it is not a threat. It is they did not say that this is the only option, but this is the only option currently. They are continuing to look for other alternatives, but they view, and I would agree, they view Starbucks as a destination location. It's similar to a Panera. It's something that people will actually go to town. They'll sit there. They'll hang out. They'll do homework. They'll have meetings. So the plans, they have changed the plans. If you'll recall, early last year, Linear approached the planning department, met with Jesse, and talked about a concept of Starbucks coming in and a drive-through. And they did take a lot of the comments of the planning department into consideration. They have provided some revised plans that would, again, I'm not endorsing this one way or the other. This is what's being proposed. There is an alternative to sort of closing off, is that Gardner? And making that all green space, extending, having an outdoor seating area, picnic tables. They proposed building trees in that area to sort of provide a buffer. They've changed somewhat the direction of where they would propose a drive-through to be more conducive to traffic coming into the plaza. It is still not ideal. It's really on the wrong side for people, going to and from work or in and out of town. But again, they view this more as a destination, that people will come there and sit there and hang out. And if you go to your Starbucks and sit there for an hour and you might need to pick up dinner, you can go walk over to Shaw's. Or if you need something for the hardware store, you'd go to Aubuchon. And therefore, that would increase the traffic to those businesses. So they are looking to have a more collaborative relationship with the town to allow this or something to happen there. They really do think that they really feel that they need a sort of another anchor business that is a destination in order to attract other businesses to want to come back to the plaza. They talked about the radius of population, which is what a lot of retailers look at, and we don't meet that threshold of having enough residents within, I forget what their 3 miles or whatever their radius was. So that if they could get someone like a Starbucks to come in, it would boost traffic. Some of the concerns, obviously, it's a drive-through, it's on what would be considered the wrong side of the street. And it's still not ideal. Even the plan that they're proposing would divert traffic. So you'd come in and sort of queue up where there's those 3 random spaces now over by where we have the Christmas tree light and the holiday tree lighting. So you would come in and run sort of alongside the building. You'd give your order, you'd go up to a drive-through, and then you would exit onto Red Acre, and that's how you would get onto 117, which obviously would increase traffic in that intersection. They took Jesse's comments into consideration and redesigned the drive-through to allow, I think they had 9 or 10 cars allowed in a queuing space Actually, it might even be more than that, which they said is more than they would ever need, but they wanted to plan for what he had requested, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They have space for 13 cars to queue before it would affect sort of the regular parking lot. So as you may be aware, and if you're not, I'll let you know, there is a citizen's petition on behalf of Linear that has been submitted for town meeting to allow a drive-through to serve food and beverages directly to a motor vehicle in the business district. These signatures have been certified. It will be on the warrant. The planning board needs to hold a public hearing, which they are tentatively scheduling for the end of March. Now, the complication is the planning board is putting forward, which they are meeting on tonight and having a public discussion on, a new business district solely for Lower Village, a Lower Village business district. In that draft proposal of a bylaw, they are prohibiting drive-throughs to any food or beverage establishment in the Lower Village business district. So that should the citizen petition go forward and pass town meeting, and then the new Lower Village business district go forward and pass town meeting, that would supersede the citizen's petition, and there still would be no drive-through allowed in Lower Village. So it's a complicated process because obviously people have been upset at the businesses leaving Lower Village and Linear specifically. They've had some issues with infrastructure that they've taken care of. They want to stay in the community. They want to expand their businesses. They are not interested, they meaning Linear, in adding any residential. They don't want to take on mixed use. That's not their business model. And a lot of what they're proposing in their plan would still meet the criteria or the requirements of the new Lower Village business district, making more green space, adding trees, adding pedestrian areas, tables and places for folks to gather. My concern is that's great for a business district to want all those things, but if we have no place for pedestrians to go, what's going to happen? So I think, I've asked Valerie to, talk to the planning board and see if there's any way to compromise, if there's any way to look at the draft zoning bylaws that they want to put forward and see if there's something that could be done that maybe allows one drive-through in the Lower Village business district. Again, by special permit, not by right, that it could still be controlled if that's something they would be willing to entertain. My concern is, and I don't know if the community supports drive-throughs, I don't know what kind of momentum there is, but we're constantly criticized for not having business and not bringing business to town. And this is an opportunity to bring a business to town, but now we'll be up against zoning issues. And I would love to find a way that we can work together with the planning board, the select board, and Linear to find a way to, help the plaza flourish, try and attract business here, try and bring in resources and services that the community would like. And again, I don't drink coffee. I don't support any of them, but I think of, we had our problems with Emma's, but I think of the benefit that Emma's brought to the community, and it was a place to go, and people had meetings there, and you could sit for a while and just chit chat, and quite frankly, now when we have meetings, we're going to the Bolton Bean, because that's where you need to go and sit and have a cup of coffee with somebody, and stay for an hour and chat. So I wanted to bring you up to date. I don't know what the solution is. I don't want there to be, quite frankly, a fight on town meeting floor of opposing views of zoning. I don't want there to be, I don't know how this board feels, but I don't want there to be sort of fighting between boards on should we have a drive-through, shouldn't we have a drive-through? But I think something needs to be done. Something needs to happen to, help Linear, if they are invested, which they seem to be, to try and expand and bring business to town. So I wanted to give you all an update. In talking with Megan, we wanted to make it an agenda item, so it was transparent that we were gonna be talking about it. The CEO of Linear, I know he's had some issues with the town in the past, and maybe people don't trust him, or whatever. I found him very honest. I found him very humbled on trying to find a solution here. I think, they obviously have a lot of money invested here. They want their arrangements with some of the businesses are paying next to nothing in rent or next to nothing in infrastructure costs because they are trying to help them succeed. So I think it's just important to have a conversation and make you all aware of where we stand as we go through, the next few months between the public hearing on the citizens petition and then town meeting on what, and I don't know what the final version will come out of the planning board for their lower village business district, or if it will change at all, but I just think it's important to let you know. Joel Cadis, who's the CEO, offered to come here. He's happy to talk to the board. He's happy to, come and give a presentation of what they're proposing, if that helps. I know they will be present at the planning board public hearing, but just wanted to bring you all up to speed. And I know Ingeborg has a question.
Yeah, what are the cons? I think I know, but what are the planning board's concerns with the drive-through? Just traffic?
So according to Valerie, the concerns were, one of their main concerns was idling vehicles. They were concerned at the cars sitting there and idling, and how many cars would be queuing. So Linear said that, I think their average for Starbucks is like 3 minutes maximum at a window when you go through the process. Excuse me. And as I said, they estimate like 5 cars at most would be in a drive-through line. And I think it's just not in the vision that they have of Lower Village. I will add that if the citizens petition passes and the Lower Village Business District passes, the citizens petition would allow a drive-through in the business district, just not Lower Village. So if someone wanted to open a Dunkin' Donuts at the Bose property, that would then allow a drive-through there. It's just excluding Lower Village, because I think they want to have a more walkable space, people sitting down, enjoying it, park-like feel. And this just isn't in that plan for them. I know there was also some concern that if and again, this is more Valerie, I have not spoken to any planning board members, but that if a Starbucks came in, they have an application for Dunkin' Donuts from the other side of the street without a drive-through, and then they would want a drive-through. And so, well, how do you say yes to one and no to the other? I said, well, it's still by special permit. Mm-hmm. If you can limit it to 1 per district, I mean, I don't want to say it's first come, first serve, but it may be. I know the Traffic Safety Committee, Advisory Committee, has this on their agenda for tomorrow to discuss their position on it. Mm-hmm. In speaking to the police chief, he supports it, provided that traffic can be managed. But he said that as far as he's concerned on his role is if we can find a way to safely bring businesses to town, then they'll find any way to work with it. I don't know how the rest of the Traffic Safety Committee will feel, but that was his position. So.
As a complete aside, but as far as Starbucks goes, I know that people do use the Starbucks drive-thru, but I also feel like a lot of people go there just to sit. So while I understand the concern about the length of cars and I don't know, there's one Starbucks in Leominster maybe that I always see 20 cars lined up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I don't know. So it's an interesting thing. I think part of the reason, talking to Denise, that we also wanted it on here is, not for us to take a position tonight, not for the planning board's having their discussions. I think at some point prior to town meeting, we will go through our list of all the warrant articles and talk about what we support and what we don't. And so, but this was a good opportunity for Denise to be fully transparent on the conversation that she had and so that people don't think that these discussions are not happening. Like, when people are mad that we don't have business in Lower Village, it's not for lack of the conversations that are actually happening. And so I think that's important for us as a board to sort of make sure that people understand that those conversations are happening. Any other questions for Denise?
I mean, I just, you know, to have something like Starbucks is actually a game changer for Linear and for us. I mean, because we do need something that draws people in, and I totally agree. It's a destination. And I think it's interesting that you said that about, you know, like Leominster, it's on Route 2. People are driving in on their way in, but this is not necessarily on their commuting route. It would be a place to go and do your homework or a meeting or whatever. So, I mean, I hope that we can find a compromise, because I think it's, that's the best news we've had about Linear in a really long time, you know, that they, you know, we like to believe that that was gonna happen, but that it's a real possibility, I think. It's, and it takes, you know, it just takes one business, and then it's gonna increase the traffic, and people will come in and take those other little buildings or other little office spaces, because they know that there's gonna be people around, so.
Right, and they did say that the square footage of the Papagino's spot is 3,200 square feet, which is, right, is that it? Yes, which is larger than a normal Starbucks, but they were willing to have the bigger space because they were hoping that it would be more inviting and that more people would want to go inside. And, you know, obviously they sell sandwiches and other stuff. So they were willing to take, or wanted to take that, and then have a large outdoor patio to allow outdoor seating.
Nice. That's amazing.
Can I ask the stupid question? I know I should know this, but when we say Lower Village Business District, is it just the Lanier property?
No.
Does it
No.
include the across?
It's short of Patterson
It goes-
Auto Body, and it goes to
Just after Stow
just
House
after
of
Stow
Pizza.
House Pizza.
There's
So it
one,
leaves the south side of 117 as well.
yes.
And you said that the Dunkin' Donuts that's thinking of going into where the old Beef and Ale was does not want to drive through?
Oh, they
No.
want to drive through.
Oh, they do want to drive through.
But they are fine without one. So they are planning, to my knowledge, they are planning to move forward with or without one, with the they're planning to move forward with the understanding that they cannot have one now. Whether or not there's a possibility, or whether or not they're told that it's never gonna happen, they seem confident that they can do fine without a drive-through. So it is not being
Because I could see a
built.
problem of having two drive-throughs on either side of. But
That
I
are
can
going,
also
they're
see
going
that,
in opposite directions then.
Yeah,
I guess the people who get Dunkin' Donuts, if you're
Right.
going in that direction and
when
you
they
get
come
Starbucks,
home,
if you're
they'll
coming
get
in.
Starbucks. Yeah, drinking Starbucks at night.
So, I just wanna interject a comment here, cause I'm not in the room. You know, a couple of things that, I think Acton doesn't have, any drive-throughs. For instance, they have a McDonald's with no drive-through, which is not common.
It's not open anymore.
I think they have no drive-through,
Close for lunch.
food businesses, and
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to find out. Because they have a happy little Starbucks there, the few times that I frequented, it's always busy. There's people that have called ahead their orders and they go and wait and pick them up, or they park and go in and pick them up. And I wonder if there's a way to push back with Starbucks and get them to come and not have a drive-through. Whether that,
Oh,
you know, they're, my understanding from back when I ran a coffee shop is that they're a pretty, you know, they're a big company with a lot of clout, and they probably get what they want a lot. But I'd just be curious to find out what the conversation was in Acton, for instance.
So I don't know if it's the same franchise owners. They told us that the group looking to negotiate with Linear would not sign a lease without a drive-through. So they were not interested in coming here. That was what they were coming here for, was to provide a drive-through opportunity.
I didn't get that.
Unfortunately, what it does for us is that we continue to be a town where we have drive-through like businesses instead of having a cafe that people stop and sit in, which is what we would like also to have. So we get less of that influence, perhaps. Okay, thanks.
thank you. All right, so we will discuss this further.
Yeah, so my only concern, or one of my concerns is, and it's more for you all, is as of right now, the tentative date of the public hearing on the citizens petition would be March 28th. Now, that has not been finalized yet, but that is a meeting night of ours. So I would just say, keep that in mind. When I hear when they do schedule it, I'll let you know. But if it's something you want to be part of or participate in, then we should just talk about that.
Is there any way they can accommodate or change their meeting date so that it doesn't conflict with the select board meeting?
The planning board that has always met on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Well,
maybe
No,
if they
but I
meet,
think
they
like
do-
their calendar, because of the, and I was being glib, but like because of their calendar and the way that they have to set public hearings and because of the other things that they do,
it's more difficult for them.
I wouldn't wanna.
No,
we can work
But we could
around it.
always, well, because they're virtual, we could always pop in
right.
to their meeting if we needed to for an hour or whatever. I think there's a way to work it out for sure. And I definitely think,
Even if it's just to hear directly from Linear or their representatives about their proposal.
Right.
And again, to hear the feedback from the community.
right,
I mean, you may hear from people, I really don't know how the community feels about drive-throughs. I don't know if they would be supportive of it or if folks would be against it, but I think it's important for you to hear, which I would expect would be a large turnout, at a public hearing
Yeah.
on this matter. So I think that's important for you to at least hear or be aware of.
I would love to hear what the traffic safety,
yeah,
because to me, that's the big thing, is
Right.
traffic moving.
well, and they had done so much work. I mean, I was an associate member on the planning board when the Lower Village Big Dig was going on, and like, so it would be interesting to hear because a drive-through was not ever a part of how traffic was going to move through there, and so the idea of closing off Gardner and sort of working something, like if that is something that's feasible and possible to be able to do it in a safe manner, I think, it's obviously something that would need to be looked at.
Takes us back to the roundabout proposal for Red Acre, I mean, cause it's dumping people out of, that's the real
Right.
challenge, right, is
Right.
that dumps
Yeah.
people out of Red Acre
Yeah.
and trying to take a left
So
there.
they'll take the right, cross, turn around and come back.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just gonna be all this double.
Yep.
So that's the one I'd love to hear. what the results
Yeah.
of that are.
Yeah, so I think tomorrow it'll be more conceptually they talk, because they haven't seen plans either, so they'll talk about just whether or not they, I guess as a group, would support traffic around it. And then once they have a solid plan, they'd certainly make a recommendation.
Yeah. All right. Do we have things we want to talk about in correspondence?
I do,
Yes.
and it was interesting that Leah, referenced something that I've been thinking, so, in terms of Denise's renewal, I was, one of the frustrating parts of the timing, I mean, she started in September, but
Right.
is that just as Leah was describing with the superintendent, we change over the board and then the people evaluating you are, like this year, Ingeborg
Right.
just joined us and,
Right.
and also I was just wondering if just in general, we should consider as part of this process that we just say your renewal date is July 1st, if that would make sense.
So that's what I was gonna request, because it doesn't make sense for September,
It doesn't,
for anything,
right?
goals,
No.
anything, it's
No,
just a
none of that.
weird.
Yeah.
So yes, and
Yeah.
as part of this, when we do meet, I would say that my new contract would start July 1st, 2023, and then go 3 years instead of,
Right. Instead of September.
because September's
Right.
just a silly
Okay.
timeline.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's, it's been bugging me since last year, so.
Do you wanna throw some dates out to us for what might work to have this meeting with you?
Well, I
Your
think-
employment agreement? No, well, I know you had said on an off night, obviously Hector will need to be here, but what is our end
So it needs to be done by, my existing contract, it needs to be done by June 30th is what the requirement is.
Okay. So we could do it in April?
We could do it in April.
You
I'll be
and-
away for the first 2 weeks of April.
That's right. Okay,
Well, I'm at meeting here.
okay. Let's, you'll be virtual in March? Is that
at
too
the-
soon?
March 28th, yeah, I'll be virtual.
No, okay.
No, but I would say, I think the end of April is probably late.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can try and, figure out timing for, you're gone the beginning of April?
Yep,
Okay,
3rd through the 18th. So that's
Well, it might be a two-part
be Tuesdays.
meeting, so we might start it at the second meeting when Hector can join us
Yeah.
remotely and Courtney will be here, and then maybe finish it
when she's not
when she's
here,
not here.
but then we would still have a quorum?
Still.
Okay,
And it can be fully remote, I mean, whatever works.
Okay.
It's just, I think it's easier to have those types of things on an off night, so
Yeah.
we're not
Well,
meeting
so we're
at
not here
9:30
until-
on
yeah,
an executive
seriously.
session.
Yeah, like
let's
that.
talk about your contract.
Exactly.
As I'm like falling asleep at the table.
As you're all yawning over there, yeah, I didn't see it.
All right, so let's figure out dates, later. All right, any other correspondence we have questions about?
Actually, kind of going back to the linear discussion, the whole thing about the water tower, any idea where that's going?
Excuse me?
The Stow Conservation Commission on March 7th is holding a hearing for an application from Linear Retail Properties. They were,
I think
the
it's
letter we got said that, by we, I mean residents at Meeting House, abutters, said something about a water tower that was going in.
No, they're
Water
doing,
tank,
they're
sorry.
doing installations to their existing system, so it's behind Linear.
There's a
So by
pond
Samuel
back there.
Prescott,
Yes, it's an underground tank that they need
Okay.
to do some work on.
so we're not gonna get a big blue tower or no big.
That's why I was
We're
like,
gonna put a
what are you
cell tower
talking
on
about?
top of it.
That's
Okay.
no. All right, anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will take that motion, Ms. Sturgis.
Second.
You have to second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Nope, sorry, all in favor, Ms. Fresha?
Right.
Ms. Clark, Mr. Costanzas,
Aye.
Ms. Sturgis, and the chair votes aye, and that is unanimous. Thank you all, have a good rest of
Hope you
February.
feel better.
Feel better,
Yes, feel
Courtney.
better.